Hey guys, on this episode I'm going to be talking about the animated television series Mighty Max. This show has a pretty interesting origin. Basically, it was developed on a toy line that started in the UK back in 1992, and about a year later it was developed into a television series which ran from 1993 until 1994. Now, if you grew up in the early 90s, you may remember these toys or kind of recognize them. They were definitely around. They were very popular. I remember I had a few. In fact, I think I still have my Mighty Max toys out in storage. Yeah, basically they were these little kind of miniature playset kind of things with these tiny little figures that I don't even think were articulated. Basically, you just sat them there on the playset and I guess let your imagination run wild. Basically, the toy line was based off of a female version of the toys called Polly Pocket. And so the company wanted to make a more boy-centric toy line, so they came up with Mighty Max. And what do little boys like? They like action and adventure, they like horror, so naturally all of these little toy playsets went along with that. And I definitely remember I have a skull one. I think that was, you like open it up and I think it's like Frankenstein's laboratory or whatever. And I think I had a snake one. I think that may have been like a mummy one or something. Maybe it was like snake people or something. I can't remember. And once the animated show came around, they naturally started making toys based off of the TV series. So I think they had one of that giant magma robot thing. I definitely remember having that toy. So yeah, they were pretty interesting. And back in the day, it was kind of hard figuring out when a cartoon show was going to be on. Basically, the only cartoon shows that I knew what channel and what time they were going to be on were the WB shows like Batman, the animated series, the Animaniacs, Power Rangers, all that kind of stuff. I knew what time and what channel, but for most cartoon shows, I had no freaking clue what channel or time they were going to be on. Like, I didn't even know what time The Simpsons were going to be on back then. So coming across a television series that you wanted to watch was kind of a stroke of luck back then. So I didn't really get to see the show on TV all of that much. But luckily, I do remember I bought a VHS of the cartoon show. And it was a really good one. I think it had some of the best episodes of the entire series on it. I think they were all season one. So when I actually started going through and watching the animated series again, it was kind of fun. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that episode. Because I watched them a million times on the VHS. So yeah, the animated series started off in September 1993 and finished off in December 94. So yeah, I mean, it ran for over a year. I think it produced about 40 episodes. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I think I only got to see like, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them back in the day. And I don't even know why I got back into this. I think one day I was just thinking like, oh yeah, you remember those Mighty Max toys? Oh yeah, and there was a freaking cartoon show. So I think I actually jumped on, I guess, Wikipedia or whatever and was kind of checking it out and stuff. And I was like, huh. Might as well hop on YouTube and see if they got any episodes or clips of the show on there. So I go on there and they had every single episode on there. So I was like, oh shit, I'll check this out for nostalgic purposes. And the funny thing is, the very first episode I must have watched a million times because it was on that VHS episode. So as soon as I started watching it, I was just blasted by nostalgia. I was like, oh shit, I remember this. Oh yeah, and this is when that happened. So it was really, really fun. And the cool thing is there was this guy who has a channel on YouTube. And he was basically somehow, because the animated series has never been released on DVD or Blu-ray or anything, basically they were just released on VHS back, 25 years ago or whatever. So basically what he was doing, he was hooking up his VCR, I guess, to his computer or whatever, and uploading the episodes to his computer. And then he was actually going through them and making them basically as high definition as he could. And unfortunately, he was only able to do like, I guess, like the first season. And I think he was only able to do like 8 or 9 of the episodes, but it was really, really cool. And he did an amazing job. And I'll definitely put a link to his channel in the description for you if you want to check it out. I mean, it's really, really cool seeing these in high definition. And basically, in order to watch season 2, I just had to hop on other channels and just kind of hippity hop around YouTube and check it out. But yeah, it was really, really fun going through this series again. I think the thing that really made this cartoon fun was just how, I guess it was just really inspired by all these cool things. Like there was the action adventure element of the series. Basically, Max, who is a kid, I guess he's like 10 or so, comes across this magical hat, or cap as they call it, the magical cap. And basically, it becomes his job to save the world from the evil Skull Master, who is basically an ancient evil. Basically, he's Satan. Yeah, he's the devil, basically, from history. And so he's naturally trapped down in hell because the last cap bearer, who was named Maximus, go figure, I guess like a couple of thousand years ago, trapped him down there under the earth, and so Skullmaster's trapped in hell, basically. And so it's up to Max to basically defeat Skullmaster and save the world. So the show has a lot of traveling around the world. They're going all over the place, so there's a lot of action adventure elements to it, and there's also a lot of horror elements. Like, you could definitely tell the guys who made the show loved horror movies. Like, naturally, there are episodes that reference famous horror movies, like in one of the science fiction episodes, the aliens who are trying to, I guess, take over the world look exactly like the xenomorphs from Alien, so that was kind of cool. And they also did a werewolf episode that looks just like an American Werewolf in London. I mean, it's, yeah, come on. And they even do an episode that was definitely inspired by John Carpenter's classic, The Thing, which I find to be very interesting because that movie wasn't, I don't think, really famous yet or really acknowledged as a classic yet. Like, I don't think that movie really started to get going until probably the 2000s when everyone realized how good that freaking movie was. So these guys were definitely ahead of the curve on that. And there's just so many cool references to famous horror movies and action adventure. Like Max is helped by 2 guys. Virgil, who's basically a, well, everyone always calls him a giant chicken, but he always corrects them saying, I am a fowl. You know, basically a bird-like creature. And so he's like Max's mentor slash, he's basically his right-hand man. He's like the most knowledgeable being on the earth. He's thousands of years old, maybe over 10,000 years old. I mean, he's just been there, done that. He just knows everything, pretty much. So his job is to basically get Max ready to defeat Skullmaster. So he's just constantly telling him about the world, the history of the world. You know, Skullmaster's been trying to conquer and destroy the world for thousands of years, and it's been up to the cap bearers to save the earth over and over again. And he gets them around the world using these portals. So, like, I think in the first episode, they end up in the Gobi Desert and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's very, very cool. And basically, Max's bodyguard is a guy named Norman, who's been around for just as long as Virgil's been around. Basically, he, I guess, was a barbarian who somehow became immortal. But he can die, but just not by old age. So he's like superhuman strong. He's, you know, very fast and just the greatest human warrior ever, pretty much. And actually, the cool thing about Norman is throughout history, he hasn't always gone as Norman. His name has, you know, always been famous warriors throughout history. Like the Scandinavians called him Thor, the Greeks called him Heracles, and the Jews called him Samson. So, you know, just throughout history, all these famous warriors and strongmen were actually Norman. So that's really cool. And the voice acting is really, really good on this show. Like Rob Paulsen does the voice of Max, and you know, it's just a great teenager boy voice. And Tony J does Virgil, and that guy, yeah, once you hear his voice, you'll recognize him. Like, that guy's been in a ton of video games, ton of cartoon shows. I mean, yeah. And the guy who does the voice of Norman is Richard Mall. So if you, another old ass show, if you ever got to watch Night Court, you would definitely recognize Richard Mall as the 6'8" bald, I guess he was a bailiff or whatever on that show. Yeah, so he was really good on this show. And Skullmaster, the villain, who, like I said, is basically Satan. Like, the guy lies, he deceives, he's murderous. I mean, he is a great villain, like a really, really good villain, because he is basically trying to kill Max, like really trying to kill Max. Like, this may be a kid's cartoon show, but yeah, Skullmaster is a really, really bad guy. And he is voiced by none other than the great Tim Curry. I mean, Tim Curry's just got everything that guy's in. He's really, really good. And he does a great voice for Skullmaster. Very, very full of hate and malevolence and just, yeah. I mean, Skullmaster is basically just this shrewd battle mage guy from history, basically. Like, he's the one that's revealed in, I think, season 1 that he's the one that destroyed Atlantis. I guess he was trying to get the Atlanteans to give him their souls. So he's basically destroying Atlantis, and he's like, all right, I can save Atlantis, but all I need is your souls, so I'll have enough power to save Atlantis. And then they foolishly give him their souls, and instead they just become his zombie slaves throughout history. So yeah, he's definitely a really bad guy. And the crazy thing, too, is that, I mean, like I said, he is trying to kill Max the entire time, trying to get the cap, because the cap in actuality isn't really a cap. It's like a magical crown that basically gives its wearer unlimited power, pretty much. And the only reason why it looks like a hat is so that, you know, it's kind of camouflage. Because if it looked the way it really does, everybody would be trying to get this thing. So it's revealed, I think, in the last episode what it really looks like. So that's pretty cool. And Skullmaster's got a ton of helpers, like his right-hand guy is Warmonger, who's basically a demon who does his master's bidding and stuff. And, you know, there's some really great enemies on this show. Basically, a lot of them are kind of comic booky. Like, there's the mad scientist who turns himself into a spider, and there's, you know, a guy like a giant skull from another dimension or whatever. I mean, there's just there's just a lot going on in this show. I mean, just tons of comic booky kind of stuff. There's tons of action and adventure. I mean, a lot of the poses and pictures of Norman on the show are taken right from Frank Frazetta. So there's definitely a Conan the Barbarian thing going on with him. I mean, Norman is always fighting giant monsters and fighting ancient beasts from history and mythology and stuff. Like, I think in one episode they actually stumble across the Cyclops that Odysseus had to kill in the Odyssey and stuff. And yeah, there's just all kinds of really, really cool references to history and action and adventure stuff. I mean, it really is fun. And that's the cool thing about the show that I, as an adult, really enjoyed, was just that all of these references to famous horror movies, famous mythological creatures and characters and stuff, and it's really, really fun. At the end of every episode, they kind of have like an epilogue where Max actually like sits down and kind of educates the child viewer, I guess you could say. Basically telling them, hey, you know, on this episode we went to the Gobi Desert and stuff, and you know, they kind of try to educate the viewer on some things. So that's kind of nice, you know, especially for kids, you know, so that they can actually learn something about the world via a kids cartoon show. But hey, I mean, whatever works. And but yeah, I mean, the thing that I really enjoyed about the show was just how diverse the episodes were. I mean, each episode was different. Like, one episode you might get like a episode dealing with a dragon from Norse mythology. Another episode you might get like a cybernetic enemy who you have to like fight in the internet, even though this is pre-internet. It's basically you have to go to cyberspace, whatever the fuck that was in 1993 and 1994. And then another episode you might have a horror episode where, Max is having to take on a evil mummy and stuff. So you just never really know what you're going to get. And that diversity is really, really fun and cool. And the jokes on the show are pretty funny too. Like the references to early 90s stuff is just hilarious. Like I remember one joke where Max is in like LA or whatever having to deal with a caveman. And there's this one part where they go to a hotel and...
Well, either we're on the right track or Guns N' Roses is staying at this hotel.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, that's just a great early 90s joke and reference. I mean, it's just like, oh my God. And the thing I liked too was how this show could be pretty serious. Like, I remember I was talking about the Atlanteans were basically zombie slaves to Skullmaster. Well, I mean, once Skullmaster gets going, I mean, he sends all these zombies after Max, and there's nothing Max can really do. I mean, these creatures who used to be the Atlanteans are pretty much immortal. Like, they will not stop until they have torn his head off and brought the cap to Skullmaster. So it's kind of creepy. Like, I mean, wherever Max goes, he's going to have to worry about running into the Atlanteans and stuff. And I mean, there's just all kinds of crazy shit going on in this show. I mean, it's really kind of out there for a kid's show because, I mean, every episode there's pretty much somebody getting killed horribly by a werewolf or a giant snake. I mean, there's always something going on. But it also gives the show a touch of realism because, I mean, Max isn't just running around spouting one-liners. I mean, he's fighting for his life and for the life of his friends. And in fact, the last two episodes of the series, I think they're a 1- and 2-parter. Basically, everybody dies. I mean, that's really, like, brutal and sad. And I remember watching the final episode. It was like the last 5 minutes of it. I was like, okay, we got a lot of loose ends to tidy up here. I mean, how are they going to do this in 5 minutes? And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but they figured out a good way. And actually, the series has a pretty good ending. And I was glad they were able to do that because if you think about it, most cartoon shows back in the day like this, they didn't have a nice conclusion. Like, they never really got a conclusion. Like, one great show I can remember, Pirates of Dark Water, that never got a conclusion. I mean, we don't know how that one ended. And, I mean, look at how long Samurai Jack went without a final episode, really. So, yeah, it was nice that they were able to finish this series up the right way, and it definitely had a good, satisfactory ending, so I'm thankful for that. But yeah, I mean, this is a really good show, and I think you would enjoy it. Like I said, each episode is pretty interesting and pretty unique. I mean, one episode you might have Max having to go up against a giant monster. The next one, you might have him like, God, I remember this one kind of creepy episode where they were in Russia, of all places, and it was this, like a crazy clown trying to kidnap children and turn them into freaks because he was born looking like, a crazy clown. So he's trying to get, like, his revenge on the world by kidnapping children and turning them into monsters and freaks. And, I mean, that was a pretty freaky episode. So, yeah, I mean, you just never know what you're going to get with this show. So, yeah, I think if you are interested in checking out this show, definitely, check out the first couple of episodes. I mean, the first episode is really, really good. So I think if you like that, then you'll like the rest of the show. And, I mean, it was just a really cool experience. I mean, every now and then I kind of remember like, oh yeah, Mighty Max. I wouldn't mind watching that show again. So I'll put the links in the description for you to check out the series. And yeah, I just want to give a big shout out and thanks to whoever it was who posted these episodes on YouTube so that I could watch them, because like I said, no one's ever released them on DVD or Blu-ray, so this is really the only way you can watch Mighty Max is on YouTube. So yeah, I mean, at least they're on there, so I'll definitely be thankful for that. And yeah, this is just a fun show. Like I said, it's really, it's just a really good boys show. Not that women couldn't like it too, but I mean, it's just the combination of action and adventure, horror, and kind of comic booky slash, like I was saying with the Frank Frazetta stuff. I mean, it's just a really cool mix of stuff. I mean, if you got small children, they would probably like the show. Or if you are a fan of early 90s cartoon shows, then yeah, definitely check this out. I think it's got a little bit for everyone. So yeah, I think it's just a really cool show, and I think you'll like it. So definitely give it a try. See what you think.